match with going into. Sounds like Robert got back.
He did, sort of.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Anyway, and then praise and praise. So this kind of thing does not happen by accident. It's any more than if you throw dice and get a handful of dice and all of them come up with one. That's chance doesn't allow that kind of thing to happen just when you're writing something at random. Here's an alternating parallelism that's also found in the Book of Mormon, and Mormon chapter 4. And he shall breathe out wrath and strifes against the work of the Lord and against the covenant people of the Lord, which are the house of Israel, and shall say, we will destroy the work of the Lord, and the Lord will not remember his covenant, which he hath made unto the house of Israel. So we've got the same kind of parallelism found in the Book of Mormon as well as in the Bible. Now, I'm going to have a recording in this particular screen. I want you to see this. I hope that you can hear it. If you can't, I'll see to it that y'all get something where you can. This came off of a DVD that I took with me to Kenya years ago, and I heard it, and I had to use it in this kind of a setting. When you see a verb used with nearly identical noun, you may be certain that this is a Hebraism. So here we have dreamed a dream in the Old Testament.
Rabbi Lau was one of the most respected religious leaders in Israel. He agreed to meet me at his home in Tel Aviv. I've been looking at this country and talking to people and asking myself day after day, is what I see here just the result of amazing human courage, foresight, and wisdom? Or is it the work of God? Is it a miracle?
I think it's a combination of both. First of all, if they wouldn't be dreamers, they wouldn't be fighters. If there wouldn't be a promise from the Almighty to our ancient fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we wouldn't dream 2,000 years to come back home. We wouldn't fight for it. We wouldn't be ready to sacrifice so many sacrificings.
Could you all hear that? Could you hear that? Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah.
The rabbi said we wouldn't be willing to sacrifice so many sacrificings. That's a modern rabbi out of Jerusalem. They still speak this way. We don't talk that way. But it's found in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's found that way in the Book of Mormon. How could Joseph Smith have known that kind of thing? And the book is filled with this kind of stuff. Bible scholars know almost nothing about these things in 1830 when young Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon. If the scholars knew little about Hebraisms in 1830, how could an uneducated farm boy in the woods of a pioneer country be able to accurately reproduce a book of nearly 800 pages that literally contains many thousands of them? The only answer is that the book is what it says it is, divinely inspired scripture. There's only three sources that the Book of Mormon could have come from: man, God, or the devil. We're going to look at the possibilities of whether it could have been man. Man could not have done this kind of thing by accident. The devil would not have done it because the Book of Mormon testifies of the divinity of Christ and speaks of him on nearly every page. It also warns us against the evils of the devil and against his false doctrines. And that leaves God as the only source of the book. So this is just another form of logic you could use to try to divine the source of the Book of Mormon. The word "and it came to pass," the frequent repetition of the words and phrases in the Book of Mormon is called storms of criticism. Joseph Smith used bad English, people said. His lack of education caused him to write things incorrectly, they said. In reality, it may have helped to preserve the Hebrew nature of the text, because if he had been better educated, he might have relied on his own language skills instead of relying totally on the Spirit of God to translate the Book of Mormon. So here's can it came to pass. Vayahi was used in the Hebrew. And by the way, I apologize again. This is one of those graphics where one of the slides where the graphic did not show up. It should have been in Hebrew right there. And then frequently used in Hebrew, in the Hebrew of the Bible and the Book of Mormon, although the Bible translators dropped out this phrase in many instances in the English Bible. And here's one of the drawings that didn't show up here, but it's a drawing of a Maya glyph that is pronounced Uchi in Maya, and it means the same as, and it came to pass. Mark Twain said in derision of the Book of Mormon that if you took out all of the and it came to passes, there wouldn't be anything left to come to pass. In reality, the frequent use of the phrase has recently been discovered to be a Hebraism and is evidence that the book is what it claims to be, a literal translation of the ancient book, inscribed on metal plates by people with Hebrew speech patterns and written in an ancient Egyptian language. The use of the word and the simple word and is found far too often in the Bible and the Book of Mormon for it to be good English. In Genesis chapter 22, 20 of its 24 verses begin with and in the King James Version. And by the way, if we were in college and we started a sentence with and, we'd probably get marked off for it. I see somebody smiling there, nodding their head. Nearly every page in the Book of Mormon will have one or more verses that begin with and. It's just not normal for English. Page 12 of the 1908 Book of Mormon has been called the and page. It's got 14 out of 14 verses that begin with and. Again, not normal for an English writer. The use of the word and. This is just another Hebraism, and the and is used to begin sentences. It's used the Hebrew did not have a period for punctuating at the end of sentences. Such words as and, behold, now, but, and for were used to start a new thought. Also, the word and was used to make a list, like they were naming off different types of metals and things. They would, each part of that would begin with an and. The same kind of word patterns are found in the Hebrew of the Bible and other ancient Middle East languages. The criticisms laid at the feet of the Book of Mormon over 150 years ago now, getting longer than that, this is an older presentation here, are now found to be evidence of its authenticity. And if our plates had been sufficiently large, we should have written in the Hebrew. This is Mormon writing. And if we could have written in Hebrew, behold, we would have had no imperfections in our record. Well, I've never seen a book yet that didn't have imperfections in it. So if it's been written by a human, it's got some kind of imperfections. And one of the evidence is that is one of the early versions of the King James Bible. I don't have this on a slide, but they were in Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments had one word missing out of them. And I'll let you guess which one it was. It was one of the thou shalt nots. Yeah, it was the one that said thou shalt not commit adultery. And they left that not out. And so that Bible became known as the Naughty Bible. Well, there's nothing that man touches that can't be corrupted. We all know that. Then there's chiasmus. A chiasmus is a structure that is written in the form of an X. And here's the pattern of it. So we're going to look at a chiasmus here. It's found in Leviticus chapter 14 in the Bible. I'm not going to read all of it. It's too long. Bill, did you ever get your thing up where you can read this? Good. That's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the words that are in the chiastic format, and then we're going to move them around. I'll show you, see what they look like. They begin with house and house, bird and bird, cedar wood and cedar wood, birds, birds, running water, house, and then 7 times there. And here's one that's found in the Book of Mormon. Men must humble themselves and become as little children and believe that salvation was and is to come in and through the atoning blood of the Lord of Christ, the Lord omnipotent. For the natural man is an enemy of God and has been from the fall of Adam and will be forever and ever. And anyway, it goes on, and this is the way it comes out. These are not naturally formed in that way. You don't normally repeat yourself in reverse order. So you can see how they actually show up. And the middle part here, the fall of Adam, is the pivotal point. Fall of Adam made Christ's atonement necessary. And it talks about all this in that order. That was a literary device that was used by the ancient Hebrews and also the writers of the Book of Mormon. No erasures. Some of you may have heard about this already, discovered by Mary Lee Treat in the early 1980s. How do you make a correction of a minor error or a mistake that is on an engraved metal plate? Well, you really don't hardly make any corrections. However, the writers had experience in this, and they learned to use other words right after they made the mistake. If they didn't want to throw the plate away and start all over again, they used corrective words like or rather. For example, Tiancum, by the orders of Moroni, caused that they should commence laboring in digging a ditch around the city, the land, and he made a mistake. And so he puts, instead of land, he puts an or down there, and he says the city bountiful, because there was a land bountiful also. Well, you know, it'd be a lot harder to build a wall around a land than it would be a city, and he intended to say the city. And Jacob describes this a little bit, and he was the one that followed Nephi as authorship in the Book of Mormon. He says, and I cannot write but little of my words because of the difficulty of the engravings of our words upon the plates. Now, Neil and I are working right now on a new translation of the Book of Mormon into Spanish, and we just finished translating that. And I've noticed that Jacob, compared to Nephi, has a very different writing style. His sentences are a lot shorter, and he just doesn't write near as much because he realizes, well, he wasn't as skilled as Nephi. And we also discovered something else. Nephi, in one of his statements, says something about, I caused something to be written. Well, that I'd never seen that before. And I don't have this on a slide yet because we just discovered it. But how was it that Nephi caused something to be written? Somebody must have been helping him. I wonder who might have been helping Nephi to write or inscribe on the plates. He caused somebody to cause this to be written. And then I remembered, who was the guy that they brought with them from Jerusalem? Zoram. Anybody remember the name? Zoram. And what did he do? He was Laban's helper in the treasury. Do you suppose that he knew how to write on those plates? I believe he even knew how to make them. That's new stuff for me, but it occurred to us at that time, what was the purpose of bringing Zoram with them? Well, at first it was expedient because they didn't want to get followed by anybody. But Zoram turned out to be Nephi's friend, and may have been a person who actually helped in writing on the plates and helped in making of the plates. That's speculation on my part, but it's something we need to study about. Here's other no erasures that are found in the Book of Mormon. And the plate that is photographed here in the background is an actual gold plate from ancient Persia dating from 450 to 500 BC. It was a special museum exhibit in Mexico City in 2007 when we were living down there. And I had gone there for other purposes, but when I saw that this was in the museum, I went to see it and I got to shoot pictures of it. Now, it was also scoffed at when Joseph Smith claimed that he had found a record of ancient scripture that was written on gold plates, metal plates. They just laughed at him. And yet today, here's a picture that I took in the Mormon exhibit here in Independence, Missouri many years ago. And it shows of this plate, it's a replica of it, how it was found in a stone box at the Temple of Persepolis, the capital city of ancient Persia. And there were 4 plates that were discovered, and 1 in each cornerstone, and 2 were gold and 2 were silver. And when I was there in Mexico City in 2007, I got to photograph them. And this one is the silver, one of the silver ones. And it was quite spectacular to be able to see those and walk around them and check the thickness of them and how the inscription was made. They were inscribed in cuneiform writing. Cuneiform is like our own alphabet. We can write using our alphabet, but we can write Spanish, English, German, French, Italian. They wrote using cuneiform 3 to 4 different languages also. Babylonians, the Persians, etc. Here is a metal plate that was discovered a number of years ago. It's considered to be the oldest inscribed metal plate that has ever been discovered. It goes back to 1200 BC, and it was discovered and put in a museum over in, I think, Iraq or something, and well, yeah, Baghdad. Okay, discovered in Baghdad. It was in a temple in Iraq, and after the war, a Holocaust survivor had somehow acquired this. We don't know how he got it, but he brought it back to the States. He used that small piece of gold that it's inscribed with cuneiform writing to hawk it and get enough money to start a business. And he went back later and paid the fee off and got it back. And later, when he died, his descendants discovered this thing, or they knew about it, and they estimated the value, had it valued, and it was worth $10 million. They said 9.5 grams of pure gold. And this was published in the USA on April 6, 2010 in the New York Post. I thought that was a rather unique date to be published. We're going to examine a little bit about the witness of pre-Columbian manuscripts now. Most tribes say that they crossed the oceans. Some claim that they were Israelites. The Annals of the Cachiqueles and the Title of the Lords of Totonicapán, they actually claim that in there. The Popol Vuh is a book that was written by the Maya, and they claim that the original book was hidden. Here's a quote from the preface of the book. "We shall bring it, that is our history, to light, because now the Popol Vuh cannot be seen anymore, in the which was clearly seen the coming from the other side of the sea." Here they come from the other side of the ocean. The Maya claim this. And you go to the same museum where you'll see these inscriptions, the codices of the ancient Mesoamericans, and they will tell you that nobody ever came across the ocean, but they came across the Bering Strait long before the Bible could have even been written. And so it goes on, it says, "The narration of our obscurity and our life was clearly seen. The original book written long ago existed, but its site is hidden to the searcher and to the thinker." Now, it's interesting that the story of the Popol Vuh has recently been uncovered in the ruins of Central America, and it's drawn out in picture form on one of the pyramids down there in Guatemala, I believe it is. And it was said, well, the Popol Vuh must have been an influence of Spanish friars that came over here. Well, that just blew that theory out of the water, because now they've got actual evidence that the story of the Popol Vuh existed long before the Spanish arrived. So archaeology, the old world and the new world, cultures that correspond with the Book of Mormon. It's been said that there is no evidence from archaeology which links with the Book of Mormon. This information is a direct challenge to such claims. Let's take a look at them. Teancum, by the orders of Moroni, caused that they should commence digging a ditch around the land, or there's that or again. Remember that we just quoted that, or the city of Bountiful. And he caused that they should build a breastwork of timbers upon the inner bank of the ditch, and they cast up dirt out of the ditch against the breastwork of timbers. And thus they did cause the Lamanites to labor until they had encircled the city of Bountiful round about with a strong wall of timbers and earth. Alma 24. Years ago, I was able to fly to Mexico with a very good friend of ours who had been on a tour with us. And he called and asked if I'd be his interpreter for him. And we worked out a deal, and I got to fly with him. And here's a flight over the ruins of Bekan, and you can see this is a national park here now. You can see where the ditch goes around that park. And here's the main highway that goes out toward Belize, coming from across from the base of the Yucatan. And you come in here, you can park and you can go in and look at all of this. I'm telling you about this because the pictures that I had of this didn't turn out, and I apologize. I've got to make them so that they won't do this when I change computers. But there's the where the ditch goes, and you can see it just as clear as a bell there. And this is an illustration about how the ditches were done. And this is taken from a booklet that I bought at the ruins of Bekan right there. It's a diagram showing that was made by the government. Here's the ditches right there, and that's an entryway over here. And here's now a sign out there, and there's a story about this that I won't have time to tell today, but interesting story. They didn't have this sign until I talked with one of the archaeologists, and came back a couple of years later and they'd put that up there. Depiction of old world faces in art. Now, people say, well, there's no evidence that the New World had any contact with the Old World before the Spaniards arrived. Well, Paul and I were at the University of the Americas down there when the guy that wrote this book, his name was Professor von Wuthenau, Alexander von Wuthenau, and he was a professor of ancient art history. And his theory or thesis in writing this book is that no artistic person, no artist could have depicted correctly a face from another culture, another people group. I don't like to use the word race because I believe there's only one race, and that's the human race. And I put that on all my government documents too. So anyway, these people are from different parts of the world that are not from Mesoamerica, and yet they have been depicted accurately. A Roman type head here, a Babylonian type head, a Greek type face, an Oriental type, an African type. How could they have known about this if they had never seen them? And I believe that that's a very good evidence that actually bypasses the DNA problem, because these people were here and there's pictures of them. We've got them. We have obtained a land of promise, a land which is choice above all other lands, and also all those who should be led out of other countries by the hand of the Lord. So Nephi here is saying that there would be other people who would be led out of other countries that would come to this land. Now, he's not including any of their history. He probably never came in contact with very many of them. But anyway, now we're going to shift to geography. Geography that corresponds with real lands and archaeological finds. I believe, now I know that there's a lot of controversy about this, but I believe that this is where the Book of Mormon lands took place, the history of the Book of Mormon. There was a land northward that was mostly occupied by the Jaredites until after their destruction. There was no evidence that the Nephites or the Lamanites or the Mulekites ever went up into that land until sometime close to the time of Christ and afterwards. And then there was a land southward, and it was a territory of the Nephites, the Lamanites, and the Mulekites. And the land southward then consisted of two parts. And this is something we've had to deal with translations. The translations of the Book of Mormon have not accurately depicted this. And it has to be done or it won't be accurate. Because the land southward consisted of a land south, which was a highland area, and a land north, which is a lowland area. And when you translate the word the land north, it's got to be different than the land northward. And sometimes that's not easy. And the land south has to be translated different from the land southward. Otherwise, your history that comes in the text of the book is not going to be accurate. And so here we have the land north was called Lehi because Lehi, south. I've got to change those around. Well, this is the way it is in the Book of Mormon. The land south was called Lehi because that's where Lehi came in, down in the land south. He crossed the Pacific Ocean. And the land north was called Mulek because Mulek came into the land north. And they went up the Sumacinta River, we believe, and what they called the River Sidon, and they built their capital city. And these two cultures lived apart from each other, the Nephite Lamanite group, because there was a barrier here, a wilderness, a mountainous wilderness that separated them for almost 400 years. They never found each other until the Nephites decided they had to get out of there. So there's a narrow strip of wilderness that's described in the Book of Mormon, and it's described as going from sea to sea, from the East Sea to the West Sea. And it was the mountains and wilderness were always connected with that together. And there is a set of mountains, a range of mountains that runs from the East Sea to the West Sea in Central America. They're called the Sierra de las Minas, right here. And it's the only mountain range and wilderness area that runs east to west from sea to sea in the Western Hemisphere. It's the only one that is right here. And it separates these two lands. And whenever they went down from the land south, from land Nephi, they went down into the land north. And when they went from Zarahemla up into the land south, they went up. And there is no variation in that. Translated glyphs. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I'd cut this one out because this is supposed to be a picture, an aerial photograph of Yaxchilan. And there's the river here. It's a huge horseshoe river that circles the city of Yaxchilan in southern Mexico. And the outside of that river is Guatemala. I apologize. Didn't get it there, but Yaxchilan has an interesting side story. It was populated by a people that was called the Mulekites at first. That is, Zarahemla was. They came from Jerusalem shortly after it was destroyed by the Babylonians. And the infant son of King Zedekiah escaped the destruction there. And his name was Mulek. That's why they were called Mulekites. They crossed the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf coast of Mexico. They did not keep any records, and so their language changed very quickly. They came up the River Sidon. It's interesting that they had come from a land that had a city in it named Sidon. Maybe they had, and they were shipping people too. The Phoenicians, we had a class here that talked about that, and I believe that class was pretty accurate, really. They came up the riverside and established Zarahemla. This surviving royal son's name was Mulek, which means king or pertaining to the king in the Hebrew and Canaanite languages. Now, the city of Yaxchilan, we believe that may be possibly Zarahemla, but because of this, it's quite interesting. Uh, it Most of the Mayan ruins have just one site glyph. It's like a logo. It's like a sign that they put up on the outside of town. And they identify that as the name of the town or the symbol. This particular ruin has two site glyphs, and they have phonetic meanings, and they have been now deciphered. This particular one, and they're similar to the Egyptian glyphs in some ways, that they're made up of more than one part. This one is pronounced as Mulek. And there are variant spellings, even in the Book of Mormon, for Mulek here. The people of Mulek lived in Zarahemla. They were given another name by King Benjamin, and they became named the Children of Christ, if I remember right. And so, in other words, that city may have had two different names. The Children of Christ, which means, talks about the Messiah, and Mulek. And original names. It's been said that there are no original names that were found in the New World that tie in with the Book of Mormon. Well, let's take a look at this. This comes from the code book called Code of the Kings. And these men are identified by these glyphs up here, who they are. So merchant, scribe, interpreter, scribe. And guess who this guy is? His name is King Layman. My goodness, how about that? There's an original name if I ever saw one. And then there's a town, a ruin today, but it was an occupied city, occupied by Mayans when the Spaniards arrived. And its original name was Lamani. And it was right in the heart of what would be today, we would identify it from the Book of Mormon as Lamanite territory, because the Lamanites that joined with Ammon and his group of men that went down there to preach, they brought a whole group of Lamanites down into the land of Zarahemla, and they asked the people of Zarahemla, where do you want us to put these people? And they said, well, put them over on the east coast by the sea. And so they did, and that's the Caribbean Sea. Zarahemla would be over here. They put them straight over there, and that's where this place is, and it's right in the heart of Lamanite territory then. Now this is I'm sorry, Paul, this is the picture. You were supposed to be right there, Paul. But he didn't get there, I'm sorry. I will have it in the next version of this. But this is what Paul was looking at. The tusks of an elephant, the whole skeleton of an elephant. And here's, actually, this is the same picture here of the things that are on the wall. And here is a horse, and the Bashkir curly is an interesting new discovery, really. And here in that same museum is a skeleton, the skull of a horse, a Native American horse that's in the museum there at Mexico City. And the horse is on the murals here. But of course, the archaeologists try to push it back to, 10,000, 100,000 years ago, whatever. Anything to make it not what it was really. Now, we know that the Bashkir curly has been discovered to be a new, they call them a race of horses, really. And the Bashkir curly has a different blood type. It has a different hair style. It loses a lot of its hair in the summertime, including the mane and the tail. And they used to be in the Rose Parade. I don't even know whether they're going to have Rose Parades anymore, but they used to be in there. And here is a picture of a Bashkir curly that I photographed in Richmond, Missouri a few years ago. And they're considered to be a pure breed, but they were not brought by the Spaniards. There's a totally different group of horses. And the blood type or the genetic types of these animals are closely related to horses that come from Mongolia. Barry Fell wrote a book a few years ago, and he gives evidence of Micmac. Micmac was a tribe of Indians from the northeast of the United States, and he demonstrates that Micmac is a reformed kind of Egyptian writing. How about that? How would Egyptian get to the Native Americans of the New World when Egyptian was a dead language at the time of Christ? There's the Egyptian, and here's the Micmac. Well, the way that I think that they may have learned the Egyptian language is that Moroni, who knew that language, when he brought the plates to be buried up in the northeast part of the United States, they would sorry, that's my phone. I'm not going to answer it. I thought maybe Paul was calling me. I believe that Moroni, who had written in ancient Egyptian, would have known that language, and he as a prophet would not have just ignored the situation. He would have actually taught anybody that he found the laws that he knew, and would have continued in the writing of it. So that's how they would have gotten the Micmac as an Egyptian language there. I know, Paul, we're running out of time here. Do you just tell me what you want me to do?
Well, I'd like for you to come back.
Well, we can do that.
We have a couple open spots. A couple of them at the end of the month or next. And let's see, what's the first one?
Well, we had a lot of problems with this particular class.
Yeah, July 5.
Got a late start.
July 5 and
Yeah.
12
Late start and then an interruption in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to see how many I've got left. I'm on slide 77, and I've still got another probably. I had a little bit less than 100. I've got probably 20 more slides left, maybe 15 to 20. What do you want me to do?
If you're available to come back on July 5 or 12, those are both.
Let's
open.
make it July 12. I think July 5 may be too close to be something else that it's in the back of my mind. I just don't think I'll be available then.
We can look at that. You can look at your schedule. We make it a final decision later, but I think we've got so much to work with already tonight that I'd like to be able to.
Well, that way you can add some more slides in. See, some
I
of
can
those
correct.
that you cut
I can
out.
correct the other ones. I'll get Paul in there this time. Okay.
There we go.
We'll do a quick review of this particular one and finish off with the last part then. All right. I'm
Right.
sorry this took place the way it did.
Well, we did have some technical problems, and I took too long to introduce you, maybe too.
Well, you know what? You didn't need to do that, Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm giving you more. Well, but this way, if we get you back again, I'd be pleased to see your face again, just because
There you go.
after 50 years, it's nice to be able to renew an old friendship.
You bet.
That's right.
And it has been really nice to be able to become reacquainted with you. And one of these days we need to get together and have a meal together here at our house, maybe.
We can do that. We'll look forward to it. Well, since it is after 9 o'clock, then you want to give us a summation statement, Frank? Just as a courtesy, if you can summarize at this point, or you want to just simply open to the questions. Take care of the summary next time.
I can give you a summary quite easily. Read the book.
There you go.
All right. Well, then the floor is open for questions for Frank Frye, ladies and gentlemen. Let's